Q and Review, celebrating 40 years of audio production, welcomes you to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports podcast, recorded from our studio in the Bishopbriggs Media Centre and by our volunteers working from home. Keep up to date with Q and Review news via our Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, or Instagram at Q and Review. That's @CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch with us directly by emailing information@qandreview.com. That's INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling us on 0141 772 3979. Please like and share our podcast and give us constructive feedback.
Evening Times Sport, July 30. Kirsty Gilmour proud to be only out LGBTQ badminton player at Olympics. Reports by Tom Harrell. Kirsty Gilmour is proud as punch to be the only out LGBTQ badminton player at the Olympics. There are 191 out LGBTQ athletes in Paris and 11 who are part of Team GB, but Gilmour is the only shuttler among that number. Said Gilmour, "I am super proud. Being the only out badminton player was an accident. I didn't mean it. To be your whole self in public is first of all a privilege and second of all necessary. You are laid bare out on that court. You are super vulnerable and aiming for your dreams, to be cheesy about it. You have to be all of yourself. For me personally, to hide a part would not be performance enhancing. I'm proud to be out." Homosexuality is criminalised in a number of nations in which badminton is the national sport, including Indonesia and Malaysia. Gilmour is competing at her third Olympic Games, the second British player to rack up that many appearances in women's singles. She has restricted herself to only one selfie in the Olympic Village with fellow Glaswegian Andy Murray. Said the 30-year-old, "I shot my shot and got a selfie. It's Andy after all. I might not get another chance." Gilmour got her Paris campaign underway with a comfortable 21-13, 21-11 win over Keisha Fatima Azara of Azerbaijan. She faces a tougher test in her second game against 6 He Bingzhou of China, a match she will need to win to progress to the knockout stages for the first time at a Games. "Honestly, I was just as nervous as at my first Olympics," said Gilmour, who is one of over 1,000 elite athletes on UK Sport's national lottery-funded world-class programme, allowing them to train full-time, have access to the world's best coaches, and benefit from pioneering medical support, which has been vital on their pathway to the Paris 2024 Games. And she continued, "I had a massive knee injury in the first Olympics in Rio. For each one, I've been more and more prepared. It's still really nervy walking out there, and then your brain goes, badminton tournament. We've done a couple of these, and then we're fine." Report by Tom Harrell. Evening Times Sport, July 30. Glasgow rower to compete for first Olympic medal. Report by Paul Martin. Rowan McKellar will bid for her first Olympic medal this weekend after helping steer British women's 8 to victory in their heat. The 30-year-old Glaswegian was part of the women's 4 who narrowly missed out on the podium in Tokyo with a 4th place finish. She has since moved into the bigger crew, and they impressed in the Stade Nautique de Vers-sur-Marne sunshine, holding off the challenge of Australia and reigning champions Canada to avoid dropping into repechage and qualify directly for Saturday's final. Britain have never won Olympic gold in the women's 8 and have ground to make up on current world champions Romania, who were convincing winners of the second heat, but Emily Ford was delighted with the way her crew laid down a marker. She said, "It was a really good start. We have not raced since Lucerne in May, so it has been quite a while. It was a bit nerve-wracking to get the first race out of the way, but I feel ready for the final. We have a few days of training, so we'll see what happens. It was close out there and anything can happen. The other crews have another race they can work things out in, and the final could be anything. It's a good statement to make, but it's not over." The men's 8 also eased straight into the final with a convincing victory in their heat. The crew includes Sholto Carnegie, who was inspired to take up the sport by his Edinburgh grandfather and trains in the Hebrides during breaks in the season. Like McKellar, Carnegie was part of a crew to finish 4th in Tokyo in the men's 4 and feels keeping it simple will be key as he sets his sights on a different outcome this time around. He said, "There is always expectation, but we have to keep the focus in the crew and do the simple things right. That's what we've done all the way through this Olympiad, and we're just going to keep going. It is very different to Tokyo. It is amazing having all the crowds. We just have to keep pushing on, using it, embracing it. There's one more race to go and it's very exciting. We just have to keep doing our thing, enjoying each other's company and searching for more. That's the exciting thing about a regatta. It's not one of those events where you just get one chance. You learn about yourself every time you go out and race." Report by Paul Martin. Evening Times Sport, July 30. Connor Goldson joins Aris Limassol. After 6 years at Rangers, Connor Goldson has left the club. Following weeks of speculation, and indeed formal negotiations, the defender has signed for Cypriot side Aris Limassol. Signed by Steven Gerrard in 2018, Goldson featured over 300 times for the Ibrox side, winning a handful of honours and playing an integral role in the club's UEFA Europa League final journey in 2022. Goldson was expected to play in Rangers' pre-season encounter with Birmingham City last week, however failed to make an appearance, after which manager Philippe Clement fielded an explanation. He told Rangers TV, "Connor was planned to start today, so that was the idea. But there was a concrete offer for him, so I allowed him to go and speak with this team. That's why he left today, to go and speak with this team, and we will see in the next couple of days." While profiling the central defender's career, the official Rangers website said, following Goldson's departure, Connor's double in a 2-0 victory at Parkhead in October set Rangers on their way, with Goldson playing every minute across a 56-game campaign in all competitions in 2021. The Englishman's durability continued to astound supporters and managers alike, as he featured over 60 times the following season, as the Light Blues embarked on a memorable run to the UEFA Europa League final, and 3 days later lifted the Scottish Cup in extra time at the National Stadium. Success in the League Cup followed last December for Goldson in what would prove to be his final campaign at the club, and everyone at Rangers wishes him the very best of luck in his future endeavours. Evening Times Sport, July 30. Nick Rogers says golf's Olympic opportunity can be worth its weight in gold. There's just no escaping those 5 interlocking Olympic rings, is there? In fact, thanks to big companies having outrageously lucrative sponsorship deals and endorsements with the Games, you can bring all the exhilaration, the excitement, the agony, and the ecstasy of affairs at the Olympiad right into the heart of your household appliances. The marketing gurus at Procter & Gamble, for instance, are so giddy about their brand of washing detergent, they are trumping it as a champion of stain and odour removal. And why not? Nothing, after all, epitomizes the dedication, the sacrifice, the athletic endeavour, and the noble cornerstones of the Olympic ideal quite like a dissolving tablet that removes stubborn splatters and soilings at 30 degrees. Citius, Altius, Fortius, and all that. With everything going on over in Paris, it will soon be golf's turn to get in on the act when the men's event, featuring the new Open champion and current Olympic champion Xander Schauffele, tees off later this week at Le Golf National, the host venue of the 2018 Ryder Cup. You can probably remember when golf was reintroduced to the Games in Rio back in 2016, and everybody harumphed themselves into such a state the IOC were on the verge of including harumphing as an Olympic demonstration sport. A raft of high-profile players withdrew, using the flimsy excuse of concerns over the Zika virus. All and sundry were moaning about the humdrum 72-hole stroke play format, while crotchety observers grumbled and groused that an Olympic gold would not be the pinnacle of a sport that already has 4 established majors. In a game that's never quick to adopt change, the whole build-up was typically, well, golf. Of course, after all the negativity and shrugging, sneering indifference, the golfing fair was pretty darn good, as Justin Rose and Henrik Stenson served up a thrilling final day shootout. Those players who did pitch up genuinely looked like they were enjoying being part of something much bigger than themselves. In a self-centered pursuit like golf, in which cocoon campaigners are often blinkered by an overinflated sense of their own worth and surrounded by a clinging coterie of nodding sycophants in their isolated comfort zones, it was a refreshingly eye-opening occasion which they fully embraced. A wider sense of perspective and duty triumphed over insularity. Golf and the Olympics seemed to get on like an athlete's village on fire. Here, in 2024, golf gets another chance to sell itself on a vast sporting stage, which brings exposure like not much else. Grow the game. This continues to be, well, a golden opportunity. Let's face it, when the Olympics are on the box, you tend to get into things that you'd never usually absorb. I'm not saying I'll be nipping out to buy a second-hand boat to emulate the coxless pairs with the sports editor on Hogganfield Loch, but the spike in interest in a whole series of sports can be considerable. The profile and publicity certainly will not do golf any harm. The return to Paris is a bit of a full circle moment for golf at the Olympics. Back in 1900 it made its debut, when the Games were tagged onto the Paris World Fair. Some 22 male and female competitors turned up in a come-all-ye gathering and battered away over 36 holes. The women's contest was 9 holes. Because of the vagaries of the organisation, the winner of the women's title, Margaret Ives Abbott, did not realise she was competing in the Olympics. She died in 1955, unaware that she had become America's first female Olympic champion. On the home front, meanwhile, David Robertson, a solicitor from the Shawlands area of Glasgow, and presumably an avid reader of The Herald, finished third in the men's event, with Walter Rutherford of Jedburgh taking second. They were Scotland's Olympic golf trailblazers. Who will blaze a trail to Olympic gold in the men's and women's events over the next 2 weeks remains to be seen. There will certainly be plenty of interest and intrigue generated by fields headlined by the aforementioned Schauffele, the world's #1 Scottish Scheffler, a wounded Rory McIlroy, and Nelly Korda. Their presence gives Olympic golf great lustre. In those weeks leading up to Rio 8 years ago, Adam Scott, who was an early naysayer of golf at the Games, suggested it would be nothing more than an exhibition. How wrong he was. Rosie's emotional fist-pumping triumph showed what it meant. McIlroy's admission in Tokyo a few years later, meanwhile, that "I never tried so hard in my life to finish third," after losing out in an epic playoff for bronze, underlined the lure of an Olympic medal. Its scarcity is its strength. Golf's Olympic movement seems to be gathering momentum. All these things take time to bed in, of course. When old Tom Morris and 7 other golfers gathered at Prestwick for the first Open in 1860, there were probably a few head-shaking, tut-tutting cynics propping up the bar in the Red Lion and muttering, "Ach, it'll never catch on." Prestige does not happen overnight. At a time when participation continues to soar, there are, globally, 10 million more on-course golfers now than in 2016. The chance to spread the golfing gospel over the next fortnight is an opportunity that's worth its weight in Olympic gold. Now, let's get into the spirit and switch that washing machine on, says Nick Rodger. Evening Times Sport, July 30. Telling post-Chelsea Rodgers line that bodes well for Europe. Report by Joe Donnelly. The Celtic USA Tour 2024 was a huge success for Brendan Rodgers and his Celtic players, with the Hoops winning all 3 of their games in the States. After steamrolling DC United 4-0 on match day 1, Celtic went on to overcome England Premier League winners Manchester City 4-3, before wrapping up the trip with a 4-1 victory over Chelsea in Notre Dame on Saturday. After the latter match, Rodgers was asked by Celtic TV about the tour as a whole, and while naturally pleased with the outcome of each encounter in turn, the manager hailed his side's performances and how well they represented the club against some top opposition in the throes of some high-profile pre-season friendlies. With the reformatted UEFA Champions League fast approaching, there are parallels to be drawn between how Celtic have represented themselves by virtue of results across the Atlantic, and how they might be perceived on European club football's biggest stage in the weeks and months that lie ahead. Should Celtic be able to deliver the same levels of free-flowing attacking football, then surely their representation in Europe will be on a par with what we were treated to over that 7-day stretch. I think it is a great way to finish off the tour, Rodgers told Celtic TV in his Chelsea post-match interview. I just said to the players afterwards that all the work they have done and how they represented the club in their time here has been absolutely brilliant. They can take great pride in that. Also on the pitch, how we have played and how we have devoted the mindset to the work and the intensity of the games has been great. The Irishman acknowledged the fact that victories over DC United, Manchester City and Chelsea were all non-competitive pre-season endeavours, but stressed that despite this, opposition of this stature never desired to lose games of football. And he added, I know big teams do not want to lose games pre-season or not. In terms of performance, I think we got what you would want from a top team structure. You've got talent in the team, and then you have work. The draw for the UEFA Champions League phase matches will take place after the playoff round qualifiers, which are set to be held on August 20 and 21 and August 27 and 28. The tournament's league phase kicks off in earnest on September 17. Report by Joe Donnelly. Evening Times Sport, July 31. Duncan Scott says that he cannot touch Chris Hoy's achievements. Report by Craig Williams. Duncan Scott shied away from comparisons with Sir Chris Hoy after equalling his fellow Scots Olympic medal haul by anchoring Team GB to victory in the men's 4x200 metres freestyle relay final. Scott has a chance to move up to joint second in the list among British athletes alongside another cyclist in Sir Bradley Wiggins as he competes in the men's 200 metres individual medley later this week. But after helping Team GB retain their relay crown to claim their first triumph in the Pool of Paris 2024, Scott pointed out he has only 2 gold medals to Hoy's half dozen. And he said, I'm nowhere near the level of athlete Chris Hoy has been. I think that's taking away from what he has achieved. I don't think I should ever be compared to Sir Chris Hoy. He's well above what I've achieved. It's pretty cool in terms of numbers, but he's got quite a few better colours than I do. I have had so many medals won by relay teammates. I can't thank them enough for what they've done. They put me in a phenomenal position tonight, like they always do. If James Guy, Tom Dean and Matt Richards can team him up, then Scott knows how to close the show as they become the first swimming team in history to defend an Olympic relay title with the same quartet. Richard had come within 200th of a second of winning the individual event, settling instead for silver, as did Adam Peaty, who lost by an identical margin in the men's 100 metres breaststroke. But there was no need for a photo finish last evening, as, while Team GB led by just half a second after the final exchange, Scott swam the fastest leg of the race to secure victory by 1.35 seconds over the United States. While Scott seemed almost bashful at being named in the same breath as Hoy, Guy was happy to celebrate his teammate. Damn right, of course, Guy said, when asked if he would compare Scott to Hoy. He is an incredible athlete, He is so process-orientated and very level-headed. Guy has 6 Olympic medals in relay events, while Dean celebrated his third, all of them gold, with Richards on 3 as well after Team GB justified their billing as red-hot favourites for top spot. They have an embarrassment of riches in the 200 metres distance, so much so that Dean was unable to defend his individual title from Tokyo 2020 after losing in Olympic qualifying to Richards and Scott. Report by Craig Williams. Evening Times Sport, July 31. Glasgow hockey star writes his own sporting blockbuster. Report by Tom Harrell. Just a few yards from the spot where Eric Liddell created the legend behind Chariots of Fire, Lee Morton scripted his own sporting blockbuster. The cinder track where Liddell blazed to 400-metre gold a century ago is now a blaze of blue astroturf, but it was still a canvas for a fellow Scot to create a moment of magic. Glaswegian Morton, who nearly quit the sport in 2019, rattled home 2 stunning goals in 5 minutes to help Team GB earn a vital 2-2 draw with the Netherlands. Said Morton, "We never give up. Until that final whistle blows, we'll back ourselves to create chances and score goals." It is a value system that Morton embodied with his own journey in the sport. He is one of the most gifted players that Britain has produced, but having been dropped from the Great Britain programme in 2019, he stood on the brink of leaving the sport. Thanks to an olive branch from head coach Paul Revington, a willingness to evolve his game, and a whole heap of natural ability, Morton is now the toast of Team GB. Said the 29-year-old, "I had given up on the Olympic dream. I was at rock bottom and going to quit, but I stuck with it, and to be here now with all of my family watching is pretty special." Princess Anne was in the building, sporting a natty Team GB bucket hat to shield from the broiling Parisian heat, and duly rewarded with a thrilling contest between the 2 top nations in the world. She would have been forgiven for nodding off during the course of a soporific first half, in which neither side wanted to give an inch, least of all RAF aircraftsman Liam Sanford. The fearless defender, who is the first to run towards the danger at penalty corners, caught a glancing blow to the cheek from the ball and went off with a bloodied face. The match turned on a moment of magic from Floris Waterboer late in the third quarter, and Ties van Dam poached another early in the fourth. Great Britain only mounted a response once the second goal had gone in, with Morton weaving his way through the box and crashing home to half the deficit. Revington's side were pouring forward in the closing minutes, with Rupert Shipperley forcing a sharp near-post save from Pirmin Blanc, World Goalkeeper of the Year in 2023. Black had no chance when the ball sat up beautifully for Morton, who lashed home a fierce leveller to silence a Dutch-dominated crowd. On the second goal, Morton said, "Shut the eyes and hope for the best is how I describe it. I'll be honest about that. The ball just sat up. I thought about taking a touch, and it just sat up very nice, so I just gave it a whack. It hit the backboard, and what a feeling." Morton's magical moment was witnessed by scores of his nearest and dearest, with his brother surprising the family by flying from Australia to watch the games. It was a crucial intervention in the context of Team GB's ambition to win their first gold medal in men's hockey since Seoul 1988. Having thrashed Spain 4-0 in their opener, Revington's side had to come from behind to earn a 2-2 draw against South Africa, and their resilience was laid bare once more in an epic encounter with the Dutch, who they could easily meet again in the medal matches. We thought it was pretty harsh to be 2-0 down, so to come back in the last few minutes and salvage a point was good. We keep an unbeaten record, and overall very happy, he said. Morton is the first Scottish player to feature in the Team GB men's hockey squad since 2008, and he is keen to leave a legacy through his performances in Paris. I want to reset that clock and hopefully show future generations that we have Scottish athletes for the men's every single Olympics, said Morton. It's been a long time. I take this as an opportunity to reset, and hopefully we have even more Scottish athletes in years to come. Report by Tom Harrell. Evening Times Sport, July 31. Martin Hannon says, Sevens final was advert for sport. France 28, Fiji 7, Rugby 1. The French were truly magnifique in winning the Olympic Sevens in the Stade de France at the weekend, and Antoine Dupont yet again showed why he is the world's #1 player. I could not believe that the French coaches left him on the bench at the start of matches, but they were proved so right when Dupont came on to make a terrific impact, especially in the final. He was a one-man bomb squad, and I am just delighted that he got the chance to show his vast talents on such a huge stage. Think of how great a legacy Dupont and his colleagues have created for French rugby. They will reap the benefit for years to come. I am writing this before the outcome of the women's sevens is known, but I can already say that both genders did rugby union proud and showed the world what a great game we have. What a pity that Team GB did not qualify for the men's tournament, but that was always a risk, one that I pointed out back in 2022 when the Scottish, English and Welsh national sevens were amalgamated into a Team GB core squad. It didn't take this bear of little brain too long to figure out that, because of the way Olympic qualification was structured, it was going to be pretty tight for the Brits to qualify. And lo, it came to pass that they narrowly failed, and thus Liza Thompson was the only Scot to feature in the sevens in Paris. A bit of a disgrace considering that we invented the sevens game here at Melrose. The Team GB amalgamation approach seems here to stay, especially as the 2026 Commonwealth Games are currently kaput. Why do the authorities down under not take a lead from football's Euros and have the various events moved to existing stadia and facilities around Australia? The Commonwealth as a whole should declare an emergency and do everything possible to make sure the 26 games go ahead, even if they have to be postponed to 27. It was done for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics for pandemic reasons, so why not for the Games in which we get to see Team Scotland? A lot of very tired Scottish men have made their way home from Uruguay and will get a short break before training starts for the season. Having watched every minute of every game at least once, I think I am entitled to say that the 4 fixtures against Canada, USA, Chile and Uruguay proved what Gregor Townsend always said, that this would be a development tour from start to finish. I thought several players looked a bit leggy in the Uruguay game, but Townsend went to the bench as he always intended to do, and what a difference those second-half substitutes made, with Patrick Harrison and Pierre Showman both coming on to score a try and steady the front row, while Jamie Ritchie did inspirational Ritchie things late on. Uruguay were not at full strength, but then neither was Scotland. But it was the depth of talent in the Scottish squad that eventually told against very brave but limited opponents. The game in Montevideo was always going to be a tricky one, not least because it was the last match of a very long season, and there was at least one big reason to celebrate when Duhan van der Merwe set the new record for tries scored by a Scottish international. And the South African-born winger is hugely proud to play for Scotland, and on current form, he will walk into the British and Irish Lions squad. A few other points. I am absolutely delighted that Arnold Clark have signed up for a sponsorship partnership with the SRU for years ahead. I know they really do take their support of sports seriously at Scotland's largest motor sales company, and at least there will be no criticism of the SRU being linked to a drinks firm, which could have been a problem with the vociferous anti-alcohol mob. I see the whispering campaign against John Jeffrey's bid to get the high chair at World Rugby has escalated in recent weeks. Jeffrey is not everyone's cup of tea, but his appointment to the top job will surely be good for Scottish rugby, and he should be endorsed. The SRU AGM in November is still planned to be an online exercise. That will not change now, I am assured. So much for a more open and honest approach by the Blazerati at Murrayfield, who know they won't have to share the room with their critics. Next week I will review the season we have just had, in August for goodness sake, and look ahead to a potentially thrilling season ahead, which will be upon us sooner than you might think, says Martin Hannon. Evening Times Sport, July 31. Bronze for Scotland's Beth Potter in Paris Olympic Triathlon. Report by Martin McMillan. Great Britain's world champion Beth Potter claimed bronze in the women's triathlon behind home favourite Cassandra Beaugrand. Potter, who won the test event around the streets of Paris last year, was one of the favourites for Olympic gold, but ultimately she could not match the pace of winner Beaugrand, with Switzerland's Julie Deron in second. The women's race was able to take place as scheduled after the water quality in the Seine was deemed safe for swimming, with the delayed men's race scheduled shortly afterwards. Tokyo silver medalist Georgia Taylor-Brown finished sixth, with the third British athlete Kate Walsh in 15th. Finally, the early morning organisers' meeting on Wednesday brought good news, with the river deemed swimmable for the first time since Friday's deluge caused elevated levels of bacteria. There was more rain on Tuesday night, but the skies cleared as the athletes dived into the water below Pont Alexander 3, the Eiffel Tower providing the spectacular backdrop that had convinced organisers to take such a big gamble. Defending champion Flora Duffy from Bermuda, who was made a dame in the 2022 New York Honours following her Tokyo triumph, took the lead early in the swim, but Potter and Taylor-Brown made sure they stayed in touch. Potter emerged from the water in fifth, with Taylor Brown 10th, and a lead group of 10 formed on the bike after Duffy was reeled in on the second lap. The wet roads around central Paris caused several athletes to slip and fall, but the leading contenders all stayed upright through the 40 kilometres and headed off on the 10-kilometre run. The pace from the start was fierce, and Taylor Brown was among those unable to cling on to a lead group of 4. Beaugrand made her move early in the final lap, and Potter could not go with her, the British athlete also losing touch with Deron and looking round often at France's Emma Lombardi just behind her. But Scottish athlete Potter hung on for a medal, Britain's third in a row in women's triathlon at the Olympics, and was delighted with it. She said, "I was going for gold, but Beaugrand and Deron were just too good for me today. I'm super happy to come away with a bronze. My coach told me to stay in the top 5 and try to stay towards the front, and I mainly stayed out of trouble. Got caught up behind a couple of crashes on the bike, but managed to stay upright and was just trying to be sensible and not doing anything mad, just be safe. It was obviously very wet. I live and train in Leeds, so I'm used to those conditions, and I've done many sessions with the boys in the wet, so I was prepared. I just didn't want to make any silly mistakes, so I just tried to be as safe as possible." Report by Martin Macmillan. Evening Times Sport, August 1. Super Killy, Bruges, here we go. Report by Ewan Payton. Bruges, let's be having you. Super Killy away Europa League edition. This is it, folks. The moment everyone has been collectively waiting for 6 weeks. Come to think of it, that might be downplaying the timescale of it ever so slightly. It's been 6 weeks since the Europa League draw paired Killy with Cercle Bruges, but in reality, an away day on foreign shores has left everyone pining for such a trip for 22 years. It will be the first in the lifetime of those supporting the club. Rill, as decent a day out as it was, absolutely does not count. And the plane at Edinburgh Airport on Wednesday morning as it embarked on the short journey to Belgium was to see. Thousands of Killy fans began their journey to Bruges yesterday, and today is the trip of a lifetime. To be travelling to mainland Europe with such vast numbers is unheard of for a club of Killy's stature, and it may never occur again. The away allocation of 2,500 sold out within days, and there will be hundreds who make the voyage to the north of Belgium who will go without tickets. It is staggering when you think about it that the allocation offered by Cercle did not meet the steep demand. I am certain there will be a few familiar faces in the home end as they do whatever it takes to watch the game at the Jan Breidel Stadium. Groot Market in the city centre will be a sea of blue today at lunchtime, and what a sight that will be. Everyone will do their best to display amateur photography skills as scenes are captured that will live with the fans for the rest of their lives. Fans who made the journey to Stavanger, Norway in September 2002 will tell you in no uncertain terms that you never know when the next time a proper European away day, where half the core fan base will travel en masse, will come around again, despite the prospects of the current team under Derek McInnes continuing to look bright. Chants of "Hello, hello" will be bellowed on repeat. Locals of the city, particularly around the market square, will definitely know all the words. The local authority have issued a message to their citizens warning them to be vigilant of the large crowds set to gather in the city, but not to be alarmed, because the fan base has a positive and friendly reputation. Much like the 800-odd Circle fans who gathered in Kilmarnock town centre last Thursday, there is every confidence our Belgian counterparts will come away from this experience, no matter how the tie ends, knowing that they have met a good bunch. The manager, players and staff have done their bit by keeping the tie very much alive, heading over for this second leg. That was the main advantage of playing at home in the first leg. Circle undoubtedly looks like they can be a very good team, but they still seem to be a few weeks short of hitting those sorts of levels. Purely judging them in the first leg, a fair summation would be that they are essentially the Belgian Kilmarnock, but with a lot more money. They will have a flurry of attacks. No one is under any illusion about that. Miron Muzlic, Circle's head coach, seems confident Kevin Denke will get chances on home soil. They will likely have the bulk of the ball, although their work rate out of possession was definitely more impressive than their capabilities on the ball at Rugby Park. Killie will also have their moments though, and that is what is important to remember. Set pieces and crosses into the box, Killie players have definitely shown they can be got at. While this second leg will be an incredibly tough match, it's all to play for, and there's no reason why Kilmarnock will not play Molde in the next round of Europa League qualifying. Evening Times Sport, August 1. How new UEFA Champions League draw format affects Scottish clubs. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Starting from the upcoming 24-25 season, UEFA are introducing a revamped league phase for their elite club competitions, replacing the traditional group stage, and it will have an impact on several Scottish clubs. This new format will see 36 clubs, including Celtic and Rangers, compete in a more dynamic and engaging structure dubbed the future of European football. It will also provide 4 additional teams the chance to participate in the Champions League. But it is not just Europe's premier competition that is experiencing an overhaul. Both the Europa League and Conference League are part of the huge shake-up. Hearts only have to face a playoff double-header to ensure they are plying their trade in the Europa League until at least January 2025. Plus, they have the fallback of automatic Conference League participation should they fail in the playoff. Meanwhile, Kilmarnock and St Mirren sit finely poised in their respective round 2 qualification ties. Killie are vying to reach the Europa League, while St Mirren are competing for a place in the Conference League. Here we look at the differences from the traditional process. Key changes to the Champions League format. In the new league phase, each team will play 8 matches against 8 different opponents, moving away from the previous format where teams faced 3 opponents twice. UEFA claim this change aims to enhance the competitiveness and balance of matches throughout the league phase, offering fans a more thrilling experience. The draw process. The revamped Champions League draw introduces a completely new concept to accommodate the league phase format. Instead of using nearly 1,000 balls and 36 bowls, all 36 teams will be drawn manually with physical balls. For each team, automated software will randomly select 8 opponents from 4 pots, ensuring total randomness while adhering to regulations like country protection. To determine their opponents, teams will be seeded into 4 pots based on their individual club coefficients at the start of the season. Notably, the Champions League title holder will always be the top seed in Pot 1. The draw starts with Pot 1 and continues sequentially until all teams have their opponents. During the draw, each team will be matched with 2 opponents from each pot, one for a home game and one for an away game. Fixture dates will be announced on August 31 once organisers have taken into consideration any calendar clashes of fixtures taking place in the same cities. The first round of league phase matches kick off during the week commencing September 23. Impact on Celtic and Rangers. Both Celtic and Rangers have regularly featured in UEFA competitions over the past few years, so their supporters should take note how they will be directly affected by these changes. As they will definitely compete in either the Champions League or Europa League this season, they will need to navigate this new draw system, which allows them to face a wider range of opponents. However, they will not be able to draw teams from their own country, and they can face a maximum of 2 teams from the same nation. This means that while they may encounter familiar foes, the opportunity to face diverse clubs from across Europe will increase, enriching their competitive experience. Celtic have automatically qualified for the new league stage after winning the Scottish Premiership last time out. Rangers, on the other hand, must triumph through a play-off to cement their spot among Europe's elite. Other UEFA competitions. The same draw principles will apply to the Europa League, ensuring some level of consistency across competitions. However, in the Conference League, teams will face 6 opponents, one from each of the 6 pots. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, August 1. Rangers Champions League fixture details confirmed. Report by David Irvin. Rangers will face Dynamo Kiev in Champions League qualifying. The Ibrox side will take on the Ukrainian outfit after they knocked out FK Partizan in the second qualifying round. Kiev had raced into a 6-2 lead in the home leg between the clubs before finishing the job with a 3-0 triumph last night to tee up the clash with Rangers. Philippe Clement's side enter the third qualifying round as a seeded team with their European bow this season to come next week. Rangers will first travel to Poland for the away leg. Kiev are playing their home fixture at Arena Lublin due to the ongoing conflict after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Rangers will then return to Scotland for the second leg, which will be played at Hampden due to construction works at Ibrox. A Rangers statement confirmed. Following the conclusion of matches, Rangers can confirm details of a UEFA Champions League third qualifying round tie with Dynamo Kiev. Away leg, Tuesday 6th of August, 7 o'clock British Summer Time. Home leg, Tuesday 13th August, Hampden Park, 7:45 British Summer Time. Broadcast and ticketing information will follow in due course for both ties. Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, August 2. Schmeichel's candid message on O'Reilly. Report by Joe Donnelly. Upon joining Celtic on the club's pre-season tour of America, Kasper Schmeichel was met with a friendly face, his countryman Matt O'Reilly. After an impressive season last term, the 23-year-old has become subject to near-constant transfer speculation. Schmeichel, however, wants nothing more than for O'Reilly to stay put. Said Schmeichel, "I'm trying everything, trust me. I'm trying everything to make him stay, but he's not given anything away yet." After a stellar season last term, the 23-year-old midfielder has been linked with a number of clubs in recent weeks, from the likes of Liverpool to Atalanta and Juventus. Schmeichel, however, is very clear on his message to the fellow Dane. Said Schmeichel, "I'm trying everything to make him stay. He's a top quality player. It's always difficult with national teams as you meet, have match day 1, game day, recovery, and then you go again. Having seen him every day here, what a player." O'Reilly's top performances last season earned him an impressive trophy haul at Celtic's own awards ceremony, with the midfielder picking up Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, and Players' Player of the Year. In January, it was reported that the likes of Inter Milan and Atletico Madrid were interested in acquiring the Dane's services on loan, but after conversations with Brendan Rodgers, he decided to remain at Celtic and help them clinch last campaign's traditional league and cup double. Schmeichel added, "From what I know of Matt, he's a very level-headed guy with great parents behind him, helping him with whatever decisions. What I do know is that he does love playing here, and he has loved his time here. And whether it's now or hopefully later, then no matter what, Celtic mean a great deal to him. For me, I hope he stays, and I'm doing everything I can to convince him." Report by Joe Donnelly. Evening Times Sport, August 2. Rangers Youth Academy footballers take on military training. Report by Sandhya Suresh. Footballers from the Rangers Youth Academy were put to the test by soldiers from the Royal Regiment of Scotland. In a rigorous military-style training, 50 professional Glasgow footballers aged 16 to 21 faced a day-long series of physical and mental challenges by the team responsible for keeping the Royal Regiment of Scotland's 2nd Battalion fit. The group met at Edinburgh's Glencorse Barracks, and Sergeant John Fleming, physical training inspector at 2 Scots, and his team, responsible for training the nation's infantry soldiers, delivered the full army treatment. The footballers' fitness, mental stamina, problem-solving, and communication skills were tested in the high-pressure environment. Sergeant Fleming said, "This intensive training is focused on allowing the team to learn about themselves and each other in a high-stress, unfamiliar setting. The training is tough and acts as a reality check for even the fittest of people, but provides invaluable insights into the discipline and resilience required at the highest level of physical training." Corolan Gay, education executive at Rangers Academy, said,
As an academy, we are more than just football development, and strongly believe in offering the correct combination of challenges and education to develop our young athletes. Within our professional development phase, we have a responsibility to aid personal growth within the player's football journey, on and off the pitch, and our recent visit to Glencorse Barracks took these players out of their comfort zone and into a hard-hitting, inspiring environment. The experience provided some intense team-building tasks, and we hope generated some thought-provoking employment opportunities away from football. We ultimately aim for our young athletes to become leaders, role models, and lifelong learners, which we feel this valuable experience has enhanced. The academy players were accompanied by their coaching team, include former pros David McCallum and Stephen Smith. Report by Sanja Suresh. Evening Times Sport, August 2. Mark Ewan reveals full circle moment. Report by David Irvin. Mark Ewan recalls first setting eyes on the OVO Hydro 2 years ago. It's a Monday night with rapper Dave headlining at the Glasgow venue. The only image racing through MMA breakout star Ewan's mind, though, is taking centre stage himself one day. A social media post from that night remains live on Ewan's Instagram account with the caption, "It's always been a dream to sell out the Hydro." Little did he know it would come so soon. Fast forward to the current day, and the 25-year-old Falkirk fighter is in line to feature on the first MMA event hosted in Scotland in 7 years, when the Professional Fighters League take over the Hydro on September 28. We can exclusively reveal Ewan, who has a 5-1 record, will fight Latvian competitor Alexander "Pretty Boy" Chizov in the event, which will feature a host of Scottish talent. "This is something I have envisioned since I was a kid," said Ewan of the fight announcement. "I remember going to the Hydro for an event, standing outside and getting my mate to take a photo of me and putting it on Instagram and saying, 'One day I'm going to come back here with a fight show. One day I'm going to sell the place out.' Now to be coming back with PFL is a full circle moment. It's crazy. It really is amazing to be coming back to Glasgow, especially with the Hydro. It was a music event. I'm sure it was Dave or something. I was there for a rap event with my mates. It was the first time I'd actually been at the Hydro to get a feel for it, the size of it, the scale of it. I know they have had shows there before in the past, and I just thought, I'm going to be back here, and I'm going to bring a big show with me. I think it is every kid's dream to sell out in their own country, so it's something I really wanted to do. There is no disputing the fact that Fight Night at the Hydro on the PFL Europe's 2024 playoffs, with tickets available on Ticketmaster, will be the biggest of Ewan's fledgling career. But the major Scottish prospect, who has won via knockout or submission finish in all 16 of his amateur and professional victories, insists it will be the first of many in his home nation. He said, "It's definitely going to be a big event, probably the highlight of my career to this point. I started off fighting in town halls in Falkirk and all over Glasgow and Edinburgh. To go from town halls to now be fighting at sold-out arenas, there is nothing that comes close to that, nothing that hits home like that. Coming home to fight is good, but in the hydro somewhere you envisioned from when you were a kid. It's just special. It's definitely early on in my career, but I did see it coming. I think it will be a recurring thing. I truly believe there is something about Scottish fans. If you have been to Parkhead or Ibrox or a Scotland game, the fans are so passionate, and they're singing from the start to the end. I've always wanted them to be fans, and that passion from Scottish fans to join MMA. Could you imagine them selling out the Hydro and all the arenas every couple of months? I have always seen that and longed for that. I think shows are going to start coming back to Scotland more often. These nights, like this, it is exactly what I live for. While Ewan remains an elite-level rising talent in Scottish MMA, he will have to shrug off defeat in his last outing to Claudio Pacella for the first time in his pro career. The Scot was on the losing end of a unanimous decision, but admits his mind was already on the September show. And he continued, "It is pivotal that I come back. That's why I keep saying I cannot get ahead of myself. I was thinking about this event before I even had that last fight. Maybe I was looking too far ahead, and that's maybe why I slipped up. It's different if you lose in front of your home crowd. I truly believe I will come back with a dominant performance and remind people that was a slip-up, a bump in the road, and that Mark Ewan is still destined for great things and he is going to go on and do it." On opponent Jizov, Ewan commented, "He's 10-3. I've never tried to take any easy fights. That last event I had so many guys say no to me or pull out against me, and I finally got a fight. I will fight anybody, but I only want to fight good guys. There's no point in going backwards and fighting bums or journeymen. The opponent I have in front of me has a good record. I have watched his fights and studied them. I am not going in there and overlooking him like I did last time." Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, August 5. Golf. Coles earns biggest career win, reports Nick Rodger. Well, that was a sore one. Paul Lawrie was hoping for a silver lining in his own backyard. Instead, he was lamenting a sorry ending. Too clear, standing on the 16th tee of the final round in the Stay Sure PGA Seniors Championship at Trump International Golf Links on the outskirts of his native Aberdeen, Lawrie leaked 4 shots during a ruinous run-in and lost by a stroke to Englishman Robert Coles. The man known as Chippy was, understandably, not very chipper and departed the scene before the sheepish golf writers could mumble the awkward phrase, "Any chance of a summing up?" Laurie's late anguish was in stark contrast to the jubilation of Coles. He was a merry old soul indeed. No wonder. In a 30-year professional career, this was the biggest win of his sporting life. A cheque for almost £93,000 would have him calling for his pipe, his bowl, and his fiddlers through in giddy triumph. Coles even got a congratulatory tinkle on the phone from the former United States President Donald Trump. Coming up trumps and all that. When Lawrie stumbled to bogeys and 16 and 17, the destination of the title was hanging in the balance. It was advantage Coles when Lawrie then hooked an approach into a treacherous spot to the left of the 18th green. The former Ryder Cup player would eventually sag to a shattering double bogey while Coles could afford the luxury of a championship-winning bogey. His win under 71, the only sub-par card in the top 10, gave him a 4 under aggregate, while Laurie's 76 left him on 3 under. It is comfortably the biggest win of my career, smiled Coles, who also won the Senior PGA Professional Championship back in May. It was a bit of a hit-and-run job, but I've completed a PGA double, and I'm thrilled by that. I know Paul will be disappointed, and I feel for him. I just got lucky at the right time and got my nose in front. My short game has been exceptional this week. Not that long ago, I did think that when I played with some of these guys on the Legends Tour, my short game was not good enough, so I've worked hard on that. I've been so disappointed with myself over the last year or so, as I felt I had a few opportunities to win and never saw them through. I was getting very frustrated with myself, but patience is a big thing in this game, and I have been a bit more patient of late. During Saturday's third round, Coles trudged to the turn in 41 shots, and his title ambitions appeared to be going up in smoke. A couple of late birdies coming home were the reward for his spirited efforts as he kept himself in the hunt. Coles would earn the ultimate reward on a Super Sunday, he said with a wry grin. After 9 holes on Saturday, all I was thinking was that I'd have an earlier tee time on Sunday, and I might be home a bit earlier. But again, patience has been key. I knew if I could string a few pars together after that outward half, it would stop the bleeding. As long as I stayed in red figures, I'd be okay, and I was. A week ago, Coles gave himself a timely lift with a spirited back 9 on the final day of the Senior Open at Carnoustie to finish just inside the top 30. And he said, I was 4 under for that 9, and it actually gave me a bit of momentum coming into this week. If it wasn't for that, I would have maybe been struggling. It gave me a bit of a jump start coming here. I was confident, but I never expected to win. With Laurie slipping back into second, Simon Can claimed third on 1 under after a 74. The leading trio were the only players to finish in red figures. As for tournament host Colin Montgomery, well, he finished in a share of 7th on 2 over after 73. Earlier in the week, Monty said this could be his last event of 2024 due to ill health. I'm taking a minimum of 2 months off, he said with a slight change of plan. I'm 61, and I haven't had a rest since I was 21. I hurt my back in a bunker. Everything is falling to bits. It sounded a bit like poor old Laurie's finish, says Nick Roger. Evening Times Sport, August 5. Rangers penalty call shows new referee initiative is working, says Graham McGarry. Willie Collum has pledged to improve communication and transparency in his new role as the Scottish FA's head of refereeing operations, as well as improving some interpretations of rules, most notably handball, that had infuriated players, managers and supporters last season. In fairness to him, it appears he has got off to a good start on all counts. Collum has spent a fair portion of his opening weeks in the position, engaging with various stakeholders in the game, taking on feedback from the clubs, and subsequently outlining to the media where we can expect to see changes in how referees are interpreting certain situations. Chief amongst those is with the sort of handball incident that we saw in the opening match of the Premiership season on Saturday, as the ball made contact with the arm of Rangers midfielder Connor Barron as he attempted to block a cross from Hearts attacker Jan Danda. It was an incident that was strikingly similar to a controversial penalty decision that went against Rangers last term, as John Souttar was penalised for handball against Kilmarnock after a VAR review in a match at Ibrox. It has been made clear, though, that while such incidents would have led to the award of a spot kick last season, this season they will not, with the SFA following UEFA's lead in relaxing the handball rule in certain situations. The key point to consider in the Barron incident is his proximity to the ball when it is struck. When the ball strikes the arm of a player in the penalty area from close range this season, it will usually not be deemed a punishable offence, whereas it most likely would have last term. The natural position of a player's arm, Colm referred to this as the football expectation, will also be taken into account, with referees instructed to consider whether the player who has made contact with the ball could reasonably have had time to get his hand out of the way. Barron's arm does move upwards towards the ball in this example, but as it is not away from his body and in an unnatural position, it may reasonably be considered to be a result of his movement in his attempt to block the ball. A further point, which may debatably be pertinent to this case, is whether or not the player has gained an advantage by blocking the ball with his arm. More specifically, referees have been asked to consider where the ball would have gone had it not hit the player on the hand or the arm. Had the ball carried through in this example, it may well have struck Barron's chest rather than making its way into the penalty area, and if so, he would have gained no advantage from the positioning of his arm. That is not to say that every handball where the arm is away from the body will be punished, but this is also something that was highlighted in the Souttar incident from last season, with the ball clearly heading for his chest, had it not made impact with his arm first. So it may be said that the standard has been set in the first game of the season, but Colm had actually set it prior to the season beginning, which is why Hearts manager Stephen Naismith was relaxed in his response to the incident, and why he was happy enough that referee Nick Walsh had made the correct call. The challenge now is for referees to apply that interpretation of the handball rule consistently across the season. No two incidents are ever the same, and Colm himself knows that there will be controversial incidents throughout the campaign. But setting his stall out clearly with the managers and media early on, there should be less grumbling about transparency and fewer penalty calls for handballs where players have had no opportunity to avoid contact. The contact has not been deliberate, and a player's movement is deemed to be natural. Report by Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, August 5. Scott embroiled in Olympic controversy. Report by Martin Macmillan. Great Britain's triathlon mixed relay team were unable to retain their Olympic title and were then downgraded from silver to bronze after an administrative mix-up. Beth Potter crossed the line with American Taylor Knibb just behind Germany's Laura Lindemann, and Britain were initially given second, only for a closer look at the photo finish to cause officials to realise their error. There were no complaints from the British team, with individual gold medalist Alex Yee saying, "Of course, there's initially a little bit of confusion, but I guess they just had not fully seen the photo finish yet. Of course we're going to be biased. We'd love the silver medal, but we are immensely proud of getting that bronze medal. It was an amazing day overall for us." France went into the race, which features teams of 2 men and 2 women competing over a shortened format, as hot favourites, but Pierre Lecorre crashed in the final stages of the first bike leg and they were unable to recover. Britain were at the front from the start, after picking Yee on the first leg, with Georgia Taylor-Brown and Sam Dickinson maintaining the advantage to give Potter a 5-second lead. But Germany were on their tails throughout, while Nib produced a storming last leg to ensure the 3 women began the final 1.8-kilometre run virtually together. Potter is a top-class runner and took bronze in the individual race last week, but she could not match the initial speed of Lindemann and Nib before hauling herself back into contention down the finish straight. Said the Scot, "The run leg was rough. I think I was a bit tired from the bike. I got a bit detached on the first lap but managed to get myself back into the mix, and then I was all in for the last 200 metres. I thought we might have had the silver. We got a bronze, but it's still a medal." While Britain would have hoped to retain their title, particularly given France's woes, they were content to have executed their game plan. "We are super proud of each other," said Taylor-Brown, who, like Ye, was part of the team in Tokyo. "I think we all put together the best performances we possibly could. Beth definitely emptied herself at the end to get back onto those 2. There was again doubt about whether the race would take place as scheduled, after another drop in water quality in the Seine, while Belgium were forced to withdraw because of illness to one of their athletes, Claire Michel. Belgian media reported Michel was suffering from E. coli infection following the individual race. Switzerland also made a substitution to their intended line-up after Adrienne Briffaud fell ill, intensifying the spotlight on the organising committee's decision to make swimming in the Seine such a central part of the Games. British triathlon performance director Mike Cavendish believes it was the right move, saying, "Clearly we would have liked to have more swim familiarisations. Clearly we would have liked not to have the men's race delayed. But I think it was the product that matters the most in the end. Yes, there are lessons to be learned by everybody, but had there been a reserve venue, and they had moved it to somewhere outside the centre of Paris, then you would not have had this unbelievable spectacle. We came down this morning and they were 3 or 4 deep at 5 a.m. We know it wasn't ideal, but at the end of the day it's been a brilliant spectacle, and that's what it will be remembered for. People will forget about the water." Britain are again the only country to win medals in every triathlon event, and Cavendish added, "If you'd said to me before we came in that we would have had 3 medals, I would have bitten your arm off. That's now 3 medals for the 3rd Games in a row, and no other country is anywhere near that, so I think we should be very proud." Ye has taken over the baton impressively from the Brownlee brothers, and he said, "I'm proud to be part of this team and continue on this legacy. The most rewarding thing for me is that hopefully we have inspired a new generation to take up our sport and fall in love with the Olympics like we all did. Report by Martin McMillan.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service.